It's high time we had a look at what Meghan Markle has been saying on Netflix in this video from Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words and only the words that people choose to use. And Meghan Markle and Harry's Netflix documentary has been making the headlines. One story today caught my attention, which is, you can see there, Meghan Markle says crew thanked her for her service on a plane back to Canada in Netflix documentary. So let's have a look at the words she uses in telling this story and find out, is she telling the truth or is she making this up? Because she gets a lot of flack for potentially making things up in this documentary. So let's look at her words. And she starts with, "We got on the plane and it's not the pilot, but whoever's sort of overseeing the crew." Why, first of all, why is the first thing you tell us about this story not who's involved? Why do you tell us who isn't involved? It's not the pilot. There's a couple of reasons for this. It could be Meghan likes status, so she'd have liked the pilot to have done it, the most important person on the plane, bar her, but it's not the pilot, and that's what's most important to her. She would have preferred the pilot to be the person that told her this, that was nice to her, but it's not. Another indication of that is it's not just any old crew member, but it's whoever's sort of overseeing the crew. So I think status does play a part in this. There is another reason why she might start by telling us who it isn't, and that is that it's a made-up story, and so she hasn't quite got it straight in her head yet. She's kind of like, well, I say it was the pilot, won't I say it was the pilot? And that could be at play here. Meghan continues, "And he came, and he knelt next to my seat, and he took his hat off. And I just remember looking at him. He goes, 'We appreciate everything you did for our country.'" Now this is like a movie scene. It happens in installments. So he came, and he knelt next to her seat, and then he took his hat off, and then she was looking at him, all before he starts talking. It's very, very dramatic installments. It's the kind of thing that happens in movies and television programs and not in real life. And who knows how dramatic scenes go together? Well, it's not the audience. They just sit and watch it all happen in front of them. No, the people who know these stages that happen in movie scenes, they're actors and actresses. Does anyone know a good actress? We can see status come in here again. He was referential. He knelt next to her seat and he took his hat off. So I think my hunch on status is coming to me here again. And then she says, "And I remember looking at him." Number one, what has that got to do with the story? If someone comes and kneels next to you, it's pretty damn obvious that you will be looking at them and going, "What are you about to do?" Or, "This is unusual." But why tell us what you remember? Generally, when people are telling us stories, they just tell us what happened. They recount events. So why tell us that you remember this? Could be that it didn't happen, that this is an attempt to convince us that it must have happened because I remember it. I'm always wary of people telling us what they remember rather than what happened. One of the reasons for that, look at the court testimony of Amber Heard this year. She remembered a lot. I remember getting up so slowly. I just remember feeling so embarrassed. If you look at any of the transcripts of her testimony, "I remember" from Amber Heard comes up a lot. And interestingly, think about how you use "I remember" myself. Sometimes it's when we don't remember things clearly. For example, if someone was late for work and you go, "Where were you?" And they were like, "Oh, I was at the dentist this morning, I told you." And you say, "Oh, I remember you saying you were going to the dentist, but didn't remember it was this morning." More from Meghan now, and it was the first time that I felt like someone saw the sacrifice. Not for my own country, for this country. It's not mine. What I'm interested in here is the phrase, "the sacrifice." She doesn't own this phrase. It's just "the sacrifice." It's distant from Meghan. It's not like it's the first time that someone saw my sacrifice or someone saw the sacrifice I made or I was making. It's just "the sacrifice." She doesn't own it. She doesn't say what the sacrifice is or who made that sacrifice. So there's no ownership there of the sacrifice there for me. Next from Meghan, she says, "We landed in Canada and one of our security guards who had been with H for so long, these guys were so wonderful. I just collapsed in his arms crying. I was like, I tried so hard." He goes, "I know you did. I know you did, ma'am. I know you did. Like I tried so hard." This starts off with a very interesting diversion. We landed in Canada and then one of our security guards, and she goes in to talk about who has employed the security guards, how long they've been employed for, what they were like. None of this adds to the story, so why tell us this? One possibility is that she's playing for time. She hasn't thought about what she's going to say. nixed. So she gives off some platitudes about how long these people have been with her or her husband, how nice they are, so that she can collect her thoughts and have the words right for what's coming. And why would that be? These are potentially deceptive. I just collapsed in his arms crying. Generally, people do not get off planes and simply collapse into the arms of someone who they employ. So it's a bit strange. And it's the word just, excuse me, just makes me feel like something is happening here that's being hidden. When people say I just did something, that tends to mean there's a lot more going on in here, and I only want to focus on this bit here. And you notice she says we landed in Canada, and she also said we got on the plane. So she's been with someone on this plane all the time because we got on it and we landed. So it's not like this person on the plane said something nice to her and the emotion was all pent up inside her until she got off the plane to talk to someone she knew, and it all came bursting out and she collapsed into their arms. She had someone with her. She said in her words, we landed in Canada. So she hasn't had this pent upness on the plane. She's been able to talk to someone about this experience before. Status comes up again. Look, she makes sure that we know the security guard referred to her as mom. And what a coincidence, because she says on the plane was the first time she felt someone saw the sacrifice. And look, she's got off the plane, and what a coincidence. Here's the second person that's seen the sacrifice just hours later. All that time, she never felt anyone saw the sacrifices that she was making, is what she wants us to believe. And then there's two in one day. What a coincidence. And she finishes by saying, that's a piece that's so triggering because you go and it still wasn't good enough and you still don't fit in. And I get distance here again. She doesn't say she was triggered. It's just triggering. So there's distance between Meghan and the trigger and whatever is triggered as well there. And then she talks about you, not her. You go and she doesn't finish that thought, but you go and, not she has done this or I have done this. And you still don't fit in, not an I still didn't fit in, or we, if she's talking about herself and Harry, we didn't fit in. So again, more distance here she wants us to get an impression from this story. And whenever she comes to the important parts about sacrifice, not fitting in, things being triggering, there's a consistent distance in her language there. So what about conclusions? Look, I'm not saying someone on that plane, on that flight, didn't say something nice to her, but it didn't happen as she described. There's too much dramatic storytelling going on. And then, as I said, there's a distance from Meghan and the experiences and the feelings and the thoughts that she is trying to convey here, the things that she wants us to get from this story. She says, the sacrifices, not my sacrifices or the sacrifices I was made. She doesn't own it. She also doesn't own the not fitting in there. And by the way, I also think she loves status. If you enjoyed this, hit the like button. It helps more people find it. If you want to join up socially, then connect.neveratruerword.com is the website to find me on all the socials. Posts.neveratruerword.com is where you'll find more articles looking at the words that people choose to use, people in the news, people in show business, true crime stories as well. Books.neveratruerword.com is where you will find a couple of books that will help you truly understand the words that people all around you are choosing to use. And if you're looking for a podcast, podcast.neveratruerword.com, you can find the Words of West Cork podcast. It's a true crime podcast that looks at the words from the people at the centre of a murder investigation. And if that wasn't enough, you will find some more videos on videos.neveratruerword. There's another one about Meghan Markle in there as well. We'll see you sometime soon for another video from Never a Truer Word.